are here with NYLAN, who has written and produced many songs, including last year's Eurovision winning hit, Nemo's The Code, and this year's song representing Cyprus, Theo Evan's Shh. NYLAN, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So to start off, can you talk about how you first came to music and songwriting?
I grew up in a musical family. So my grandfather, he was a saxophone player on the jazz side of music. So I grew up with names like Charlie Parker, Miles Davis on the bebop side. And then I also grew up with a father who was a country pop artist in Norway in the 90s. Every time I walk past a guitar, my bad impulse control kind of makes me grab that guitar and just play it. I'm originally a singer. That's kind of how I went into study music after I was in the Norwegian army for a bit of like 2.5 years. But then I've always just known that I wanted to do music professionally. So I started studying in Liverpool at an institute called LIPA, Liverpool Institute for Performing Arts, and kind of switched halfway through there as I just intuitively felt like I wanted to be touching all kinds of parts of music creation, not just the vocals or the lyrics and that side of it. And after graduating in 2020, I wanted to live off of music from the get-go, which has been kind of a good engine into meeting new people, traveling all over Europe, Asia.
Can you talk about the difference between like writing a song for yourself and your own voice versus writing for another artist?
Writing for myself is quite a different thing because the artist is ultimately the one who's going to represent what the song is about. So when I write for myself, I have my own style. I have my own little weird things that I like to do that I kind of maybe would never bring into a session just because the building blocks for another artist's project is not really fitting. So in that case, I would always kind of start with a conversation to try to get to know the artist. If it's the first time I meet them, for instance, maybe we can compare notes if it's similar observations on things in life.
As someone who's a songwriter and a producer, in what ways do you think about those as two separate parts of the process?
Music production these days, it's kind of always integrated into things because you can always record things and start kind of messing about with the sounds from the get-go. So you have like an infinite amount of opportunities to start kind of from whichever angle works. So I would say like it really depends on the feeling in the room. Do we want this song to open up with like a strong statement lyrically? That would then make the whole start of the writing process be about that lyrical little motif that we're trying to make. Sometimes we are just really curious to see what happens if we just start pressing notes, putting a big reverb on it. Like, where does our mind go from there?
The Code was written at a songwriting camp in collaboration with Nemo, Benji Alasu, and Linda Dalla. Can you talk about how that song came about?
I mean, a songwriting camp can be all different kinds of things. It's not like around the campfire with a with a guitar most of the time. I've never been to those ones. But in the case of the songwriting camp where we wrote The Code, this is one of the more organized ones. So this is the PRO, the rights collector in Switzerland, who kind of organizes this, hires some A&Rs, invites some labels to come to the listening session. It goes over, I think, 3 days of writing. And then there's the last day, which is the listening session. We ended up with like almost 40 songs. In the morning, you get separated into groups, which is a very kind of intense moment because it's like a roll of a dice in terms of the people that you'll meet, the kind of vision that the artist will have, which makes it super exciting because you basically then spread out everyone into their own studios for the day. And it's basically a blank sheet of paper and a question. What are we going to do today? This was day 2 of writing. And I'd met Nemo for lunch just the day before. And also I'd noticed the voice from just an open door in the studio from the day before. So I was like, this is going to be super exciting because I heard like how insanely good Nemo sings. I think we pretty early on start talking about a groove, the drum and bass kind of breakbeat groove. I think that was one of the first things Nemo said. We talked about musical background, like what music we love, basically showing each other songs. We'll listen to a lot of Queen, we'll listen to, I think, David Bowie. And from there, it went really, really, really quick. I think I just went to the keyboard. Benji and I almost said in unison, we need to start this with like a plucky sound. And that's when I just played the first notes that you'll hear. Nemo did the melody like almost instantly, the first start of the everybody. We kind of take a break in the actual making of these melodies, and we're like, what if this part is like a big this, and what if this part is like that? It went like clockwork, really. Like one of the closest moments to what I define as like absolute flow.
At what point did the sort of lyric concept come together? Like,
Kind of what led everything to go so smoothly is that Nemo had kind of a vision, I think, from the start, and how that was kind of developed in explaining it in the moment. She started explaining how they felt, and it was freedom to kind of reply to that in terms of what we could do with it musically. And then Linda and Nemo kind of started talking about the lyric side of it. Me and Benji go on the musical side, listening to each other and kind of trying to build, let's say, two pillars at the same time.
thinking about like the state that the song was in when you played it for people at the end of the camp, and then what happened afterwards.
The song was all there, like within a
That's amazing.
few hours. And then it's all about, like, generally writing all songs, you start with something and then you basically solve problems. Like this part doesn't really make that part shine. You're problem solving all the time. And in this case, I think we're just in conversation, had a very clear plan about how the song would turn out. So all the arrangements, kind of the most of the feelings of the song were there, most of the production was there. And then we kind of had a plan about bringing out at a later point the massive orchestra feeling to it.
Talking more generally about the songwriting camp process, for you as a writer, I guess, what are the sort of advantages and disadvantages of something that's that compressed?
You put quite a bit of pressure on writers and on artists, especially since you have people actually listening to what you made that day. You don't really have time to go in and revise anything. What you leave the studio with that day is what 40, 50, 60 people will listen to and judge in a way, especially when you come to these kind of Eurovision camps. I come to view this as kind of an exercise in trust, like kind of a cliche, but trusting the process. You have to go with your intuition because there's no time to really doubt. It's also kind of a test of the team. And sometimes it's not the best composition of people. Sometimes I'd say it's limiting in the way that you can't really think about all the different ways a song can go. You have to kind of narrow it. Being in a songwriting camp maybe requires more preparation for the artist. Whoever wants to express something in the lyrics, they would need to prepare before. From my side, I do around 10 camps a year. And the rest of the time, it's complete freedom. Should we write a verse today and then just go for vacation for 3 weeks and not do anything else? But then having in mind how productive you can be if you just force yourself to write one song in one day. Having that in mind is also like why I find songwriting camps so valuable.
I feel what's very common is that they'll pair two songwriters together on almost like songwriting dates almost. And I feel like it seems like in these camps, most of the time it's 3-4 people in the room. So if two people's vibe isn't quite work, there's still two other options.
You're completely right. Like I'd say 3 or 4 people in a room is just more brains to analyze a complex problem solving situation, which is songwriting. And who's going to decide what to prioritize? Sometimes you need to grab the role of composing something to spark inspiration in others. Sometimes they're the ones who spark inspiration with you. If there's 3 people or 4 people, there's someone that might have an idea about why that's not a good idea, and then explain an alternative. And then you have a good conversation going that would never happen if it's like 2 people that kind of ride in the same style. And there's basically a bit more, not conflict, but like a turbulence, good turbulence, if that's even a songwriting phrase.
Yeah. What was your experience like being a songwriter at Eurovision?
It was wild. You come to one of the biggest TV productions on the planet, and you come there having kind of done your work. You go there and you realize that your song that you just made up out of nothing with people that you didn't know but now know as really good friends, trying to experience that in a moment was just a fantastic feeling. I'd also say that it's a way for people to view kind of the process of songwriting. Like people go in and they really analyze these songs because it's a competition. And then that was also like a very, very interesting thing to kind of meet people backstage who are professionals, or like TV people who are curious about how we made the songs. Or you meet people in the streets who we were just going to the cafe with Nemo and the team, and people come up and they say something about like why they love the song, why they were surprised at this point. And for instance, like going into the second verse there where Nemo starts rapping.
Let me tell you a tale about life, for the good and the bad, better hold on tight. Who decides what's wrong, what's right? Everything is balance, everything's light. I got so much on my mind, and I've been no break all night. I'm so pumped, I'm so psyched, it's bigger than me, I'm getting so hyped.
The way it kind of like shocked a lot of people in the moment when they heard it, like, oh, that's like so surprising and sick. It's very interesting for a songwriter to hear like how much knowledge people have about songwriting. And that's, I think, Eurovision sets that apart from other events, is that level of analysis that the audience has.
With the Code winning Eurovision, how has that changed your life, your career, your trajectory as a songwriter, if it has at all?
It's definitely changed. I have had a lot of new opportunities, doors open, people that I've met in places that I wouldn't be able to without winning. And then there's the balance between like, should I change the way that I work? Should I focus more on just going into all these new doors, or should I actually stay grounded? That's like the question that I think all of us were going through. And where we landed is like, yes, it's changed, but also we've had a strategy that obviously worked.
At this year's Eurovision, you're a writer on Cyprus's song, Shh.
Hush, hush, if you know my name, then please don't repeat it. Hush, hush, if you know my name, then keep it a secret.
That was an invitation from a production company in Cyprus that invited us to come write in Greece. And they had chosen the artist without Theo even knowing it yet. So we knew that we were writing for Theo, but Theo didn't know that that's what we were doing. We were presented with an idea that Dimitris had, like some kind of developed tracks and melodies. So it was a bit more building blocks rather than just a blank sheet. And the same way that I always write, it's just, let's talk about this thing. Let's kind of create some kind of limitations in terms of what do we see this being on stage? How can we make kind of the mysticism, the lyrics work together with the harmony and music? And what type of song are we dealing with here? And then just basically having that plan, which is a very vague plan, just launch and try to execute. And we did that over a longer period than what we're doing in the songwriting. I think we developed most of the songwriting in like 1 or 2 days, where we went back and kind of revised some of the storylines. It being kind of a riddle, it was more like pieces to solve like that.
MGP watchers will be familiar with Elsie Bay. You've worked a lot with her.
To you, in 100 years, no one will know.
Can you talk about that collaboration and how it came about?
Yeah, so we're actually partners, and we met.
Oh, me.
Yeah. Maybe not many people know that. And we met at a songwriting camp a few years ago. And then during COVID, we kind of extended a songwriting camp indefinitely, because there's a studio in Norway. It's called the Wood Studios. There were no restrictions to kind of work together. And then there was a songwriting camp, I think 2021, where Elsie just wanted to stay and then write for a few more days. And then basically not go back to lockdown in Oslo.
Right.
And that's when we kind of started working together a lot. And then that turned into love.
That's
That's amazing. Are there certain qualities that, draw you towards certain artists or make you want to write for them?
I think most of the time it's just pure compatibility. First melody sang, you kind of just know if it's a good match. I've never really worked with someone where it turned out great without it being like a talking the same language kind of thing. And in the way that I kind of work with new artists or new songwriters is just listening to their songs. Sometimes I would just listen for the lyrics and the message of the song. Sometimes I would listen to the production style, and I would kind of always latch onto something that I'm like, oh, that's sick. That's something that I would love trying to do in a different way, or taking that further into a new song.
Does the process change up a lot from who you're working with?
There's no rules really that I follow. If someone has something that I'm like, that sounds very strange, I would just let them develop the idea fully, because maybe it's me who's stupid, who just can't really see it. And then sometimes it just clicks and it's just like, how can I have not realized how fucking great that idea was? And then over the years, that has turned into kind of an intuition about how to collaborate with people, how to communicate, whether an idea has problems in it, or if I'm like, you keep doing exactly what you're doing and I'll sit here and drink tea until that whole thing is developed, because you don't need my help at the moment.
How do you navigate disagreement?
Be honest, not like trash the idea, but either try and find something in it. There's always a good idea within a bad idea. Even if it's one note, you would be able to develop something from it. Kind of encouraging people to reach their true potential in developing an idea. I think that's also important in songwriting, is to not come into the habit of saying that everything is great, because then you'll end up kind of off course.
How has your process changed with experience?
It has made me prioritize things differently, like less production, more songwriting, in terms of what are we really developing here. Yes, texture has a lot to do with it, but most of the time is melodies over chord progressions and motifs in the track. Stop thinking about what instruments are actually in the production and start thinking about what function has it got. Does this horn section surprise me? And is that what I want it to do? I don't need to think about whether it's 3 trombones and 5 saxophones that do that.
That's a perfect way to wrap up.
Thank you so much,
Thank
guys.
you so much.
It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you so much. This has been great.